Welcome to another episode of IoT and IP Explained, where we explore the relationship between cutting-edge technologies in the Internet of Things, intellectual property rights, and their impacts on global challenges. Today, we are focusing on the data economy within the context of the Internet of Things and how this combination can help countries achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. My name is Claudia Tapia, and with me I have Dr. Begoña Otero. Begoña is a lawyer specialized in information law and competition law. Her current role is Senior Research Fellow at Max Planck Institute for Innovation and Competition. Previously, she worked as an independent consultant for large companies, European projects, and international associations. She is also former Dean of EU Business School, and before writing her PhD, she worked as an IP lawyer both in Spain and in Germany. Begoña, welcome to our podcast. I'm thrilled you are here.
Good morning, Claudia. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here too.
Excellent. In 2015, the United Nations made a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by 2030. They released a set of 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. They cover a broad range of social and economic development issues, including poverty, hunger, health, education, climate change, gender equality, water, sanitation, energy, urbanization, environment, and social justice. And the IoT will play a crucial role to achieve these SDGs. For example, smart agriculture can assist achieve zero hunger. Wearables can monitor patients' health metrics in real time, enabling remote care and early detection of potential health issues. We see also IoT devices like smart sensors and meters that can monitor water quality and optimize water distribution systems. And another example is IoT-driven smart cities that promote sustainable urban planning and management, and so on. The IoT connects billions of devices worldwide, enabling them to communicate. The data economy, which is the topic of today's episode, represents a vast field where immense volumes of data are generated, analyzed, and monetized. This network of devices collects an extensive amount of data points. I understand by analyzing these data points, we can obtain significant insights that help us achieving the SDGs. But how, Begoña? How do they do that?
Well, again, first, Claudia, thanks for having me here. I'm thrilled. I'm very happy. And I'm very happy to be here talking about this topic. About the how, well, you already mentioned some examples. So we know that in agriculture, the use of IoT devices helps collect data, and that nowadays we have uses of that data that help in prediction and also in prevention, and prevention of plagues, prediction of climate disasters, or we know that in the field of health, that the use of data, well, we have the example of the European Health Data Space that it's trying to reap all the benefits of that. And just imagine the fact that you can go to your doctor, to your, as they call it here in Germany, the Hausarzt, so your general, your family doctor, and just with one, maybe sometimes with the finger, but just with a card, put in there with the chip, the doctor can get all the information of what has happened to you, where you have been treated, what have been your diseases. That gives you an overview that will help to make better predictions on what might be happening to you at this moment. So it's all these kind of improvements. In the case of connected cars, it's multiple. So we know that there is a lot of potential. I think we are still at a very early stage also. So we need, as a society, we need to be humble. But we do have a lot of potential use cases and new cases and business models coming with that.
Indeed, the more and more things are getting connected, the more use cases we will see and the more data will be out there.
Indeed, not just so on the one hand, it's about bringing the right partners together so they can talk about it frankly, honestly, and openly. And in that regard, it's sometimes where the current regulation might help or kind of not help. So prevent these conversations happening to a certain extent, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's a big corporation or an SME. Anyone that wants to run a business or come with a new business case will also need to come with a return of investment at the end. So that's one thing. But on the other side of the spectrum, you also need to bring that together and to be able to bring cases that can pass on what in innovation is called the valley of death. No, so that's something that now might seem very promising, but then it will never reach the market because yes, it looks very promising, but then you cannot materialize. So people will not find interest in that. So you need to have also the engagement of consumers or potential users then. No? So that makes that the combination is quite complicated. Let's put it like that. It's like a 3 Michelin starred plate, no dish. So you need to bring everything. It's very, very detailed. It's fantastic in the end if it works.
So you mentioned a regulation that might help or not necessarily help. Which regulation do you have in mind?
I mean, I meant regulations in general. So when I refer to regulations, I refer to all the laws, the regulatory tools that we have in place and those that are also in the way to come. Some countries are much more running or upfront running, like the European Union. We can see with all the Data Act, DSA, so Digital Service Act, the Digital Markets Act, so the Artificial Intelligence Act, all these acts trying to break these data silos, that rightly the Commission points in their data strategy in 2020. Whether they will achieve that, it's something that we will also not see immediately, because laws also have times. But on top of that, I think it's important that space for private ordering is created so that these conversations can happen. And in that regard, there are movements all over the world, not just in Europe, where data associations, open data, so NGOs, the civil society is playing a really important task in this regard, but also the companies. So associations such as initially Gaia X, we have different examples. It's not only happening here, we have similar examples in India, in the project that I am part of, where we're looking at data governance in emerging economies. We have seen similarities in Brazil coming from civil societies, and many of those are just thriving and coming without the need of regulation pushing them. It's just the market. It's going faster than the law, as normally happens. However, and maybe we can discuss that in other questions, if we want the market to develop or to provide, let's put it like that, rather than develop in a certain way, to provide the outcomes that we want as a democratic society, when you were reading all the SDGs, well, all these values, all these goals are part of a democratic society. This is also the connection. It's not a dictatorship. It's not, so it goes in a very concrete line of thought. And that's how we want our markets to provide. And that's important. So it goes in line also with what Mariana Mazzucato or Acemoglu are pinpointing, as big economists of our times, in talking about these mission-oriented goals. But that also, if we look back in the days, are very much related to the ideas of ordoliberalism and the Freiburg School. So it's something that has been with us for quite some time, I will say.
Indeed, creating this system where the market is incentivized also to find solutions, because this is a very dynamic area. So if we try to do it via regulation, I have the impression often they are coming kind of too late, or they are not foreseeing things that are happening or are about to happen in maybe 1 to 3 months. On the other hand, I also see sometimes there is a need to regulate. So always finding this balance, it's challenging.
It's a challenging compromise, yes.
Indeed. So let's talk a bit on data sharing. Mm-hmm. And now you have your opinion on this, and so I would like to for you to share with the audience which SDGs are most directly impacted by data sharing.
Well, I think the answer to that question is all of them are impacted, but not just by data sharing. I would say that if we look at, and this is one of the preliminary findings that we found in this project that I'm working on at the Max Planck Institute, if I may, with Professor Drexel and a huge amount of colleagues, not just from the Institute, but also from India, from Brazil, and from Senegal.
By the way, congratulations. 2 years of work, I've seen. So it's really hard work, I imagine.
Yes, because we have been in the field, we have run workshops with all the stakeholders, governments, companies, civil society. So it's been really, really hard. But the first, let's put it like that, the first preliminary finding that we can really attest is that looking at the data economy and data sharing as such is too short-sighted. Because yes, we need data sharing, but we also need that the data has certain amounts of quality when it's collected, that the data can interoperate or can be poured. At the end of the day, that the data can be used, reused, accessed. So it's not only about sharing. Sharing, as this saying in English, sharing is caring, indeed. But for that to happen, you need a whole ecosystem that relates much more to data governance, looking at it from a holistic point of view. So not just looking at what regulations are in place, but how data is collected, how the data supply chain, how the data life cycle happens. No? And that's still something that we're working on, we're developing. We hope it might help also future research projects from all over the world to build on that. We know there are other people also working on these, like Professor Fellust at the New York University. We think it's important to consider that it's not just data sharing, it's everything around data. And sharing is just one more step. Important one, yes, but just one more step.
Very important remark. Thank you so much for sharing. I think this went one step further, what is typically seen in the request in the past. So we need to have access. But as you said, access alone is not going to bring it. What are the main challenges regarding intellectual property rights that we face when leveraging data and IoT technologies for sustainable development?
Well, if we have sustainable development as an end goal, everything in a way can affect this trying to have this level playing field. But when we're looking at potential conflicts between existing rights, like IP rights, and conflicts that might happen because you need to access and use data, and there we come also, what is data, what is information? So what are we talking about? We can see now in Europe, we have the Data Act, the regulation, and the definition of data is quite broad.
Yes, we had it in the last episode with Marta Duque. So we went step by step, and indeed, very broad.
So at the end of the day, I understand that any IP holder that has patents or trade secrets, although they are addressed in this regulation, or databases or copyright, think about all the issues that are happening around text and data mining. Nowadays, the discussion keeps on going. Concern, but not just that. Think about public information, PSI, as now it's open data, but still, what is open data? We still don't have an international agreement on that. So all these issues, when you bring them down to earth, when you go to the specific context, because there is no one size fits all, I'm afraid, or at least that's my impression based on my time researching into the topic. You need to address each context specifically, and the issues that you might have in health that are much more probably related to access to personal data, also previous rights, and constitutional rights in this case. And we're talking about privacy, but we're also talking about cybersecurity in some cases. So you need to take all that into account. And that's the challenge. You cannot just say, this is, X for everybody. No, we will do that and we will solve the problems across the board, so across the table, and automotive sector, health, agriculture, just to name three of them, no, you will have the magic recipe. There is no silver bullet. So you need to go and see what issues you might have here, what circumstances are affecting this situation, that there is this tension and sharing is not happening. Why? Due to these potential conflicts, or is due to something else? Because sometimes what we have seen is that it's also due to something else. There is no willing to share because there is no legal certainty, for instance, because the regulation is not clear enough, or the laws. I just want to sometimes, from an English-speaking point of view, regulation has a meaning, no? So referring to everything, not just hard law, not just command and control. No? So I think that's important to have these two. It's like when you need two pair of glasses, no? One to look at distance and one to focus. And I think this exercise we need to do.
So what I'm hearing is that probably we're going to need to have different solutions for different sectors, but even within sectors, maybe different solutions for different use cases.
Yes, I get so. Yes, absolutely.
That makes it very easy.
Well, that also brings a lot of job opportunities.
Indeed. And I also think that this reinforces the point made before regarding encouraging the market to find solutions, because otherwise it's going to be mission impossible for the regulation to do so. How do we achieve a balance between exclusivity granted by IP rights and the need to access and use data in some scenarios, and the respect on already acquired rights?
Well, I think it's a bit of what I just said, but it depends on who are you asking. No, if you're asking the regulator how they will resolve that issue, traditionally what we have been looking is at whether there is market failure or not. No, if we need to intervene, if the regulator or the legislator will have to make a decision here and say, well, this is too much, or this is here we see that the market is failing to provide, so we need to not push. Which is a bit what we have seen at the European Union level, no? With the issue of we have a fragmented data market because data, it's mostly in silos. This is what the communication from 2020 mainly was building upon. Also the white paper on AI. But in other cases, that might not be necessarily the case, or that might not be happening. Still, what we have seen in the last, I will say, decade, is that there is a huge amount of power, that market power, that it's going into the same incumbents, let's put it like that. And the problem comes when those incumbents do not only hold the data, but they also hold the infrastructure that you need for the data. And they also have the skills people that can deal with the data. So in those cases, you might need certain intervention, legal intervention, even to decide that how to waive in certain cases IP rights, or how to find these more balanced situations. But otherwise, I must say that I am not a big favor of these waivers. So what we have seen back in the day with the COVID, for instance, that to go with an IP waiver might not be the best if you intervene in a market that it's already working and providing, and there is a background that we don't see. We only see the immediate effect, not like in the case of COVID. Oh, we need the vaccines now. Yes, but what you're not seeing, it's all the investment that has happened up to reach to that point, that companies that hold all the patents have made. For instance, and I am not defending the pharma industry here, but you need to be honest and look at the market and see, well, R&D is happening because we have this system in place. You cannot just come and break the system just because of the sake of bringing a new system in place.
I can totally relate to that. I mean, we're having the same issue with the regulation on standard essential patents, and I see companies investing heavily in research and development because of the trust they had in the system, in intellectual property rights and the protection they deliver. And a regulation in this case, I'm not a big fan of this, as you might, but we will have another podcast on this. What economic benefits can countries expect by integrating these data economy strategies in the IoT context in their efforts to achieve the SDGs?
Well, I think the potential economic benefits, not only economic and social benefits are huge. And that you can see, just to give you an example, if you look at the statements or the ministerial decisions coming from the African Union, the last two, one is only relating to data and the potential that well-governed data together with infrastructure in play, with digital skills in place, so human competences, and so on and so forth, will have for the whole continent that might be able to bring them up to another level in terms of development, but not economic development just for a few, but from the point of view that everyone can reap those benefits and profit from them. Because we're looking at small farmers, we're looking at small companies and entrepreneurs. We're looking at building skills. And that's what will allow people to not, in some cases, need to migrate and flee from a country where they don't see future because there is no future. So I think the potential is huge. At the end of the day, what matters is how. Again, we go back in a way to the first question, but it's really important how policies design. And I think in that sense, it's not so much about concrete laws, but looking at the whole picture and have a vision and have a goal to pursue and have everybody pushing, public and private sectors pushing in the same direction. And that's the challenge of our days, I think, especially when we look at the data economy.
I fully agree.
One person that I really admire, which is actually my boss, Professor Drexel, always tell us, so we as researchers, when we don't find a way to agree, when we disagree, we phrase that as a question. And I think that's important because it's very contextual dependent. So as I said, there is no one size fits all that will solve all these. I mean, it's like when we talk about education, no? What is the bringing the digital school. It's not about bringing laptops to the school and telling the students, now you work on a laptop. No, it's about teaching them computing skills, learning how to, and computing at the end. And maybe, I don't know, I hope that all software engineers listening to this will agree with me. It's about solving problems. Software, computing science, it's about solving problems. It's about finding solutions to problems. That's why we had computing in the beginning, no? In a way that a machine can do it. So that's what we need to learn. That's what we need to teach our children for the future so they can deal with all that.
Yes, I'm thinking the need also for this remote education. I wrote an article a time ago with Wayne Chinembiri on bringing education in remote areas. And for that, you need this combination of course, resources, but also the connectivity. But this comes also from large investment. And this brings back to the whole need of having this balance and fostering companies to make that investments, even if they don't see an immediate return, but for this bigger picture and being able to do something good for the world, but also being ideally getting benefits so that they can contribute in this vision.
I also think that goes very much into this idea on the market process. Yes, we need to understand the market process. We want to incentivize, but we also, and we know that this is embedded into a regulatory framework, but this regulatory framework is based on democratic values. And that should reflect also in the way that business developed models. So the way that business profit from running business.
If you would like the audience to stick with a final thought, a message, takeaway from this podcast, what would that be?
Well, we're talking about IoT, data economy, and the future. No? So the main takeaway, I think, or to me, is that it's a huge challenge. It requires a holistic view, and that's also a challenge for lawyers, economists, public policy makers, for everyone, for business, for all the stakeholders involved. But we need to be able to focus on the end goal, to work together. Otherwise, well, we won't make it, unfortunately. I mean, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but then we will end up in a scattered, not precisely level playing field. So the holistic view, context dependent, there is no silver bullet, and the goals need always to be present. And that goal is important because it's environmentally preserving what we have, which is the nature, which is the environment, considering the environmental impact. Not by having more data or more data centers, we're going to do better or we're going to do the best. So we need also to find that balance and reconcile what amount of technology do we want to implement, and in which cases it's really important and in which cases we can't do otherwise, considering what is the environmental impact of that too. So looking at that from the circularity perspective, it's important.
Yeah, and also the part that you share of companies not necessarily looking to the immediate benefits, but also looking at the mid-term and long-term benefits of investing in something or sharing with others. I think that's also key.
I agree. Yes.
Thank you so much, Begoña, for your time and sharing your experience in this very, very important topic. But before we finish, could you share with us a lesson learned? Something that maybe at that time in the past you saw as a mistake, and now going back, looking to what happened and what you have learned, now you interpret it as a lesson learned.
Okay, yes, I will have to pick one because there are several. But I mean, from the point of view of being a researcher, what I do, I think that maybe in the past I was much more, I would say, I wrongly thought that for conducting research, you could do it on your own. So that especially legal research, you go, which is another way of looking at research, going to the text, going to the laws, reading, and nowadays, maybe it's because I also have a much more functional approach to it. I think interdisciplinary, it's key, and team working, it's indispensable. So future looking, or as a lesson learned, I think that's for me one of the biggest as a researcher, that you need to be able to sit around the table and you need to be able to agree to disagree with people that might think differently, that come with different backgrounds, but that's how you grow and that's how you find solutions to big problems. The only way. There is no way that you can do it on your own.
When I'm hearing you saying this, I'm connecting to what I think is a need for more conversations also between academia and industry.
Mm-hmm.
When I finished my PhD and I started to work in the industry, I realized that some of my findings from the PhD were really completely wrong. That was despite the fact of having interviewed over 60 companies. But then suddenly I was at BlackBerry, and then suddenly I started to see how negotiations really are about. Still, I think if I would have spent even more time talking to more companies, I think I would have come out with solutions that will be more practical.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always a balance to keep, on the one hand, your independent hat and being able to say whatever you think, but being open to listen what others have to say. And I think this complements this part of looking at all these disciplines. I like very much, by the way, the sentence that you say, when we cannot agree, let's raise a question and continue the dialogue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I learned that from Professor Drexel, really, from Joseph.
Yes, he's amazing.
He's a great mentor.
Begoña, thank you very much. Thanks also the audience for staying with us. And we look forward to your comments and feedback. And if you like this podcast, please give us 5 stars. And I look forward to continue this discussion on another day.
Me too. Thank you very much.